So in this segment, we're going to be discussing most voters say Brexit is to blame for food shortages, a poll reveals. So this is quite interesting. So most voters think Brexit is to blame for widespread shortages of fruit and vegetables on supermarket shelves, a poll for The Independent has found. The majority of the public, 57%, said Britain's exit from the EU was behind the lack of fresh produce, according to a Savanta survey. Now, this is surprising given that the Tories and the media have kept pushing the idea that it's just global factors. The BBC did a whole fact check piece which points the fault more at the supermarkets not wanting to pay more for produce and then pass that on to consumers, or they don't want to break their existing, kind of pricing contracts and structures. The latter is possible, but would you rather have nothing to sell and kind of push people going to market traders rather than having stuff to sell and getting people through the doors? Plus, supermarkets have been raising prices on us for years, especially during the COVID era. So to argue the supermarkets are doing this out of the goodness of their hearts is nonsense. I still don't understand how certain shops that have branches in other countries like Tesco or Lidl would be happy to buy produce at higher prices in other countries, but not for Great Britain. It makes no sense in my opinion. 1 in 3, 36%, said Brexit was not to blame. The poll also discovered 57% had been affected by shortages, while 40% of people were unaffected. It's surprising that 40% of people were not affected. Does that mean they were able to buy produce but in limited quantities as supermarkets ration the stuff? Does it mean they weren't impacted at all? What does that, or does that mean that they just don't really buy, tomatoes and cucumbers and things like that, so the shortages haven't impacted them because it's not things they typically buy? Unusual weather, which has hurt crops in Spain and North Africa, has been blamed for UK shelves being short of tomatoes and other fresh produce. But farming campaigners and other experts have pointed to Brexit for the particularly acute shortage in Britain, describing the idea of Spanish weather being solely to blame as, quote, absolute nonsense, end quote. And if everyone had shortages, around Europe, then it's fine, you could blame global factors, but they're not facing shortages. Brexiteers keep mentioning Ireland, yet they still have tomatoes and they are not facing a shortage, not like we are. They are having logistical issues, yes. There were mentions of potential shortages weeks down the line, but that hasn't happened. Great Britain is facing a logistics nightmare because lorry drivers don't want to come here due to the long queues. That's another problem we're facing. School meal providers say items such as lettuce, tomatoes, and cucumbers are among the items off the menu due to, quote, extreme shortages, end quote, and, quote, unviable costs, end quote, with ministers now working with schools to try and minimise the impact. This is terrible for kids on a nutritional level. School lunches are not the best anyways in terms of health, so this will make them worse. But it's also an issue for kids who are pickier eaters. I know there will be people talking about how back in their day, they would eat what they're given or they go hungry. But times have changed, so I really don't want to hear it about the glorious days of don't want to eat, then go hungry. Cabinet ministers Chris Heaton Harris rejected the idea that Brexit has made Britain poorer, saying, quote, I say no, end quote. He told Sky News, asked for the evidence to back up his claim. Mr. Heaton Harris said his, quote, evidence is we are still a growing economy, we are still doing really well, end quote. And I don't know, bro, I don't think we're doing that great. Really bad growth numbers thanks to Brexit and your party's general nonsense. So I can't wait for your party to lose the next election so I can say, see you, chump. But overall, just because the economy's growing, given the last couple of years, the growth numbers are not great, especially when we're the least impacted, I think, out of the G7, or at least less impacted than most of the European G7 members. But anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, support the channel on Patreon if you can, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.